It was just another ordinary evening when I first noticed the red flag. I had come home from work expecting to relax with Lauren, but something felt off. The house was quiet, eerily so. It was usually filled with the sound of her voice or the television humming in the background. But that evening everything was still. I dropped my briefcase by the door and hung my coat in the closet. I didn't hear any movement, which was unusual. Lauren was always in motion when I came home, either preparing dinner or catching up on emails. I walked into the living room and found it empty. The soft glow of the lamp cast long shadows across the room, but there was no sign of her. I made my way to the kitchen where I found her. She had just walked through the door, and there was something about her that made me pause. Her hair was messy and she was fidgeting with her bag, avoiding eye contact. She had just had a work meeting earlier, but she didn't seem the least bit tired, as if something was weighing on her. I had to admit I wasn't expecting anything extraordinary. It had been a long day at work, the kind where nothing goes right and you're just trying to get through it. I was looking forward to the quiet evening we usually spent together, nothing fancy, just a night of dinner, maybe a glass of wine, and some TV. But this time it felt different. There was a slight tension in the air, like she was holding something back. She kissed me on the cheek when I walked into the kitchen, but it was a quick, almost distracted kiss. No warm embrace like usual. I thought maybe she was just tired from her meeting, or maybe I was reading too much into it. After all, we all have those days where we don't quite feel like ourselves. I busied myself making coffee, trying to push aside the strange feeling. As I was brewing it, I caught a faint scent in the air. It wasn't mine. Men's cologne. A strong, musky scent that I immediately recognized wasn't one I wore. And definitely not a cologne I had ever smelled on any of her colleagues. I took a deep breath, wondering if I was imagining things. After all, she had been out in the city for her meeting. Maybe she had brushed against someone or gotten the scent from walking past someone on the street. But then something caught my eye. As Lauren made her way into the living room, her scarf shifted and I saw the way it was draped around her neck, a bit too perfectly, too casually. She had not been wearing it this morning. Not that I was keeping a mental checklist of her outfits, but I knew she didn't leave the house with that scarf. I wasn't even sure if I had seen it around the house at all. It was small things like that that had me second-guessing the normal routine. Still, I pushed it aside. She was home. She had just had a long day. Maybe she was a bit off, but nothing to get worked up about. A few minutes passed, and I was about to sit down with my coffee when I noticed something else, something that made my heart skip a beat. I walked over to the laundry room where the washing machine was running. I don't know why I went in there, but there I was, staring at the pile of clothes inside. And then it hit me. A shirt. A man's shirt. Neatly folded, tucked among our laundry. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even the kind of shirt I'd ever worn, too bright, too clean. I took a step closer, looking at the pattern. Definitely not mine. In the back of my mind, I was hoping for a logical explanation, but the tight knot in my stomach was growing. I stood there for a few moments, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Was it hers? Was it something that belonged to a friend she had helped? I tried to tell myself that it was nothing, that I was overthinking. But my gut was screaming at me. Something wasn't right. I didn't make a scene. I didn't want to start an argument for no reason. Instead, I took a deep breath and calmly walked into the living room. Lauren was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't seem to notice me at first. I stood there for a moment, watching her as she laughed at something on the screen. She was smiling, but it didn't feel genuine. I don't know how to describe it, it was just the way she looked at the screen, like she was elsewhere. Somewhere that wasn't here with me. I let a few seconds pass before I finally spoke. "Hey, Lauren," I said, trying to sound casual. "There's a shirt in the washing machine. It's not mine." Her eyes flickered for just a second. She looked up at me, her expression tight, but she quickly forced a smile. "Oh, it's just a coworker's shirt. I gave him a ride home after the meeting, and I think he left it in the car. He must have forgotten it." I nodded slowly. "Oh, okay." The answer was so quick, so confident, that I almost believed her. But there was something in the way she said it, something that didn't feel entirely believable. She wasn't even flustered. Not even a flicker of uncertainty. She had the answer ready, as if she had anticipated the question. I didn't press her, though. It wasn't like I had concrete proof of anything. Just my gut, a growing sense that I was missing something crucial. I decided to let it go for the moment. No need to escalate things. But in my mind, the question lingered: who leaves their shirt behind in someone's car? And why did it feel like she was lying? There was no anger, no panic in her voice. She was too calm. Too calm. I let it sit there, filed away in my head for later. The evening went on like usual, but that feeling never left. I kept replaying the moment in my mind, wondering if it meant something. Was I being paranoid? Or was this a sign of something I was too afraid to face? I didn't know yet, but I would find out soon enough. I had a sinking feeling I was about to uncover something much bigger than just a shirt. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet. I spent the next few nights trying to act like everything was normal. Lauren was still, for the most part, the same person I had married, charming, engaging, the life of the room. But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was something I wasn't seeing. The events from that evening, the cologne, the man's shirt, the weird, forced smile she gave me when I asked about it, all of it seemed to linger in the air, suffocating me with a sense of dread. Over the next few days, Lauren's behavior shifted slightly. She had always been someone who loved spending time with me after work, but now she seemed distant. Not in the way that you might expect, where she was angry or frustrated, but in a way that made me question if she was emotionally checked out. She was always on her phone more than usual, and when I asked about it, she'd give me a quick answer, just work stuff. I wasn't a jealous person. I never had been. But something had changed in the way she acted around me. It was subtle at first, a glance at her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention, a little too much time spent in the bathroom getting ready for bed, a sudden need to take calls in private. She started locking her phone screen whenever I walked by, a small but noticeable shift in her behavior. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that I was just overthinking things. But deep down I knew something was different. I wasn't stupid. I had heard the stories, seen the signs in other relationships before. The way people start to look for ways to hide things, to keep secrets. I knew I was only seeing the tip of the iceberg. Then, a week later, it happened again. Lauren had gone out for a girls' night with her friends, a typical Friday night thing. I had no reason to be suspicious. She'd done it countless times before. But this time, as I sat at home, I felt an unease creeping up on me. I told myself I was just being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I should be paying attention. So, I waited for the texts that usually came through when she was out, letting me know she was fine. Around 11 p.m. I got a text. It wasn't from Lauren though, it was from her friend Lisa. "Hey, we're at a bar downtown if you want to swing by and join us." I smiled at the message. That was typical for Lisa, she always invited me out to meet the girls. I was always too tired from work to go, but it was nice to know they cared enough to invite me. But this time I felt something else. Something was off. I didn't want to go, but I also didn't want to stay home and let my thoughts spiral. I wanted to do something, anything to distract myself. So I decided to go for a drive. When I got to the bar, I didn't see Lauren right away. I scanned the crowd of people trying to pick out her bright smile or laugh, but she wasn't there. I texted her to ask if she was still out. "Yeah, we're just having some fun. I'll be home soon. Love you," she replied almost immediately. It was short and to the point. She never used to be that brief, especially when texting me after a night out. Something about the message didn't sit right with me. I stayed at the bar for about an hour, nursing a drink, but I couldn't shake the thought that something was wrong. I didn't like the way the night felt. The longer I stayed, the more my thoughts turned into doubts. It was around 1 a.m. when I finally decided to leave. I drove home slowly, letting my mind wander through 1,000 what-ifs. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Lauren's car was already in the garage. I walked inside and found the house dark. I wasn't surprised. Lauren had always preferred the lights dimmed when she came home late. She liked the quiet, a bit of solitude after a night out with her friends. But this time, when I heard her footsteps coming down the hall, something was different. She didn't seem surprised to see me. She looked at me, then quickly glanced away as if she was trying to hide something. "Hey, you're home early," she said. I smiled, trying to keep the mood light. "Yeah, just got tired of the bar. Everyone seems to know someone who knows someone else, and it gets old quick." She laughed lightly, but it sounded forced. She grabbed her purse and headed for the bedroom. "I'm really tired. Long night. Good night." "Okay," I said, but I wasn't convinced. I stood there in the dim light of the hallway, staring after her as she disappeared into the bedroom. I wanted to say something, anything. But I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to start a confrontation over nothing. I had no proof, just a feeling. A nagging, insistent feeling that told me I was missing something. I had to get to the bottom of it, but I wasn't sure how. I decided to try something. I didn't want to seem suspicious or push too hard, but the next morning I decided to check her phone. I wasn't proud of it, but the doubt inside me was too strong to ignore. I went into the bedroom while she was in the shower. Her phone was lying on the bed, unlocked as she had left it. I picked it up, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what I was hoping to find, but I couldn't shake the need to check. I opened her text messages first. The first few were from friends and family, nothing unusual. But then I saw a thread with someone named Justin. My stomach sank. Justin? She had never mentioned him. I opened the thread and my hands started to shake as I read the messages. They were recent, dating back only a few days. The conversation was lighthearted at first, with joking about work and how hard things had been. But then it turned different. Can't stop thinking about the other night Justin had texted her. My heart skipped. The other night? I scrolled further. There were pictures attached of them at a hotel. A hotel I didn't recognize. And then the words, "Can't wait to do it again." I froze. This couldn't be happening. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead I just sat there in silence, holding her phone in my hands, the truth staring back at me. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, but when Lauren came out of the shower, I quickly put her phone back in the same place. She didn't notice, of course. She walked past me, humming as she went into the kitchen. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but something inside me told me I needed more. I needed the full truth, not just fragments of it. I stood there for a long time, taking deep breaths. My mind was spinning, trying to process the evidence that was right in front of me. She had betrayed me. But how could I approach her without breaking down? Without letting her see how much she had hurt me? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the messages. "Can't wait to do it again." It replayed over and over in my mind, a phrase that burned into my thoughts, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. I kept seeing the hotel photos, the closeness between Lauren and Justin, the way she looked at him, like she had a secret. My mind was a war zone, fighting between disbelief and anger, and I couldn't seem to escape the storm. At some point in the early hours of the morning, I had to get up. I couldn't just lie there anymore. I needed to think. I walked downstairs as quietly as I could and stood by the kitchen counter, staring at the coffee maker. The familiar hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock were the only sounds in the house. It was all so eerily normal. It felt like the calm before the storm. I had no idea how I would confront her, how I would even look her in the eye after everything I had seen. The woman I had married, the woman I trusted, had been hiding a life from me. I didn't know how to process it. Should I confront her now, when the pain was raw and fresh? Should I wait until I had my emotions under control? Part of me wanted to yell, to throw everything in her face and demand answers, but I knew that wouldn't help. I needed to stay calm. I needed to think clearly. I spent the rest of the night pacing the house, my mind running through 1,000 scenarios, 1,000 questions. How long had this been going on? Was it just Justin, or was there someone else? Had she been seeing him for months? Was this all a lie? My marriage, my life, everything I had built with Lauren, was it all a facade? When morning came, I had no clear answers. I had no plan except for the one thing that felt most important. I needed to confront her. I needed to hear it from her. No more hiding, no more pretending. I had to know the truth. Lauren was already up when I walked into the kitchen. She was making her usual coffee, humming to herself like nothing was wrong. I stood there for a moment, watching her. She was so normal. Her back was to me, but I could hear the clinking of her mug, the steam rising from the coffee machine. I stood there, trying to gather the words, but nothing came. I didn't know how to approach her. Everything felt like a trap. I didn't want to accuse her without giving her a chance to explain, but I also didn't want to let her continue lying. It felt like I was caught between two worlds, one where everything was normal and one where everything was shattered. Finally, I spoke. "Lauren," I said, my voice steady but thick with tension. "We need to talk." She turned around, her expression faltering for a split second, but then it was gone, replaced with that familiar, warm smile. "Sure, what's up?" She set the coffee down and walked over to me as if we were about to have another casual conversation. But I could see it in her eyes, the flicker of recognition, the guilt she was trying so hard to hide. "About Justin," I said, cutting straight to the point. Her face went pale, and I could see the color drain from her cheeks. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she just stood there, frozen, staring at me. I waited for her to say something, anything. But the silence stretched on, and in that moment, I realized just how deep the betrayal ran. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't something small. This was a choice she had made. A choice that had destroyed the trust between us. I pushed forward. "I saw the messages, Lauren. The pictures. The hotel. The things you said. What the hell is going on?" She shook her head quickly, her hands trembling. "Mark," she paused as if trying to gather herself. "It's not what you think." I felt a wave of nausea hit me. "Not what I think." "I saw the photos, Lauren. I saw the texts. Can't wait to do it again." "How's that not what I think?" She took a step back, her eyes welling with tears. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this." "Then how did it happen, Lauren?" I asked, my voice rising without my permission. I was trying to stay calm, but the hurt was too much, too fresh. How did it go from the woman I trusted, the woman I built my life with, to this? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she just stared at me as if she didn't know how to explain herself. She ran her hands through her hair, a nervous habit I had seen countless times, but it wasn't comforting now. It felt like a sign of someone who was running out of excuses. I never wanted to hurt you, she said quietly, her voice trembling. It just happened. Justin and we were friends at first. We worked together and then we started talking more. And I don't know, Mark, it felt easy, you know? Like everything else in my life was falling apart and this was the one thing that made sense. I took a deep breath. How long, Lauren? How long have you been seeing him? She hesitated, her eyes darting to the side. She couldn't even look me in the eye. A few months. It's been going on for a while, but it wasn't serious at first. It wasn't about you, it wasn't about our marriage. I swear, I never meant for it to go this far. Her words cut through me like a knife. A few months. How could I not have seen it? How could I have been so blind? We had been living in the same house, sharing the same bed, and she had been carrying on a secret life right under my nose. And the hotel? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What about that? What about the photos? She paused, her hand over her mouth. I don't know what to say. It was a mistake, okay? It was just a stupid mistake, and I'm so sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. I shook my head, disbelief turning to anger. A mistake? That's how you're going to explain this? You betrayed me, Lauren. You lied to me. You've been lying to me for months, and you think sorry is enough. Her eyes welled with tears, and she reached out toward me. Please, don't say that. Please, just let me explain. I love you. I swear I do. I never meant for this to happen. I stepped back, shaking my head. No, Lauren. Don't even try. You can't love someone and do this to them. You can't love someone and lie to their face every day. For a moment, we just stood there in silence, the weight of her betrayal hanging between us. I wanted to scream, to cry, to rage against everything that had just shattered in my life, but instead, I just stood there, numb. Mark, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make it right. I felt a flash of anger surge inside me, but I kept it in check. No, Lauren. You don't get to make it right. It's over. You made your choice. And now I'm making mine. The next few days were the hardest of my life. The house, which had once felt like home, now felt like a prison. Every room, every hallway seemed to echo with the betrayal I had just uncovered. I could hear her voice in the back of my mind, her excuses, her apologies, but none of it mattered. The trust was gone, and no amount of tears, no amount of explanations could bring it back. Lauren had begged me to reconsider. She promised it would never happen again. She told me she loved me, that she was lost, and that Justin had only been a temporary escape from the pressures of life. She wanted to work things out, to go to therapy, to rebuild what we had. But none of it felt real anymore. How could I trust her? How could I look at her and not see the lies, the deceit, the betrayal in her eyes? I spent the next few days in a daze, moving through the motions of life but never truly engaging with it. I went to work, but I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept returning to the same thoughts. Why didn't I see this sooner? Why didn't I notice the signs? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, but the anger wasn't just directed at her. It was also directed at myself. I had let this happen. I had allowed her to walk all over the trust we had built over the years. Lauren was desperate. She tried everything to win me back. She cooked dinner for me, made little gestures that she thought might get me to soften. She apologized over and over, told me that she was sorry beyond words. But every time she did, I just felt more suffocated. The woman who stood in front of me wasn't the woman I had married. This version of her was a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. She had become someone who could look me in the eye and lie to my face. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the lies. The fact that she could keep this secret from me for so long and pretend like everything was fine was what shattered me the most. We had built a life together. We had plans, dreams, a future, and she had thrown it all away for someone else. The night after the confrontation, I left the house. I needed space to think. I rented a small place just outside the city, a quiet cabin where I could get away from everything. I didn't want to be near her, not yet. Couldn't be. The anger was too raw, and the hurt was too deep. I needed to process everything without her constant presence reminding me of the betrayal. I spent 3 days there, alone with my thoughts. The silence was suffocating at first, but eventually, It became a relief. I didn't have to look at her face, didn't have to hear her apologies. I could just think, without the constant barrage of emotions she was throwing at me. During those 3 days, I did something I had never considered before. I met with a lawyer. I knew that I needed to prepare for what came next, even though I had no idea what that would be. I wasn't ready to make any decisions yet, but I knew I couldn't just sit back and let this happen to me. I had to take control of my life, of my future. The lawyer was a no-nonsense woman named Claire. She listened to my story, took down the details, and explained the steps I could take. "You've been married for a long time," she said, her voice calm and professional. "It's going to be a difficult process, but you have options. You can file for divorce, you can look at your assets, and we can make sure everything is divided fairly." Her words were like a punch to the gut. Divorce. It was something I had never even considered, not in a million years. I had always believed that Lauren and I were stronger than anything that could tear us apart. But now, as I sat in that office, I knew that there was no going back. The life I had built with her was over. I was going to have to start from scratch. I spent hours with Claire, going through our financials, making sure I understood my rights. It felt like a cold, clinical process, but it was necessary. I had to be smart about this. I couldn't afford to let my emotions dictate my decisions. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was about protecting myself and my future. When I finally returned to the house, it was like walking into a different world. Lauren was sitting on the couch, waiting for me. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw me, she stood up, her face filled with hope. "Mark, I've been thinking about everything," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've betrayed your trust. But I love you, and I'll do anything to make it right. Please, please don't leave me." I stood there for a moment, taking in her words, trying to process everything I had learned over the past few days. Her desperation was palpable, but it didn't change anything. I had already made up my mind. "I can't do this anymore, Lauren," I said, my voice firm but quiet. "I can't keep living in this lie. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when I know what you've done. I've been to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce." The words felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I didn't want to say them, but I knew it was the only option. I couldn't stay in this marriage anymore. I couldn't trust her, and without trust, there was nothing left. Lauren's face crumpled, and for the first time in days, I saw her break down completely. She collapsed onto the couch, her hands covering her face as she sobbed. "Please, Mark, don't do this. I love you. I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes." I stood there, watching her, feeling nothing but emptiness. I didn't want to feel sorry for her anymore. I didn't want to be the one who always tried to fix things. This wasn't my burden to carry. It was hers. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. "I'm sorry, Lauren," I said, my voice soft but resolute. "But it's over. I've made my decision." She didn't answer, but I could see the pain in her eyes. It was a pain I knew all too well. I had felt it too, but I couldn't let it consume me. I had to move forward, no matter how hard it was. That night, I packed my things and left the house. I didn't want to stay in a place that had been tainted by lies. I wanted to be somewhere new, somewhere I could start fresh. As I walked out the door for the last time, I didn't look back. The next few months were a blur. The divorce process was long and painful, but I never wavered in my decision. I was done. I was free. And slowly, I started rebuilding my life, piece by piece. Lauren moved out of the house shortly after I filed the papers. She tried to contact me a few times, sending me texts, emails, even letters, begging me to reconsider. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every time I looked at her messages, I was reminded of the betrayal. I couldn't afford to let myself get pulled back into the past. I focused on my business, on my career, on myself. I spent time with friends, reconnected with people I had lost touch with during the marriage. I traveled, tried new things, and allowed myself to heal. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. One day, about a year after everything fell apart, I found myself sitting at a cafe in the city, meeting with a new business partner. As we talked about future projects, I noticed a woman sitting alone at a nearby table. She was reading a book, completely absorbed in it, and I found myself admiring her from across the room. It was funny, but in that moment I realized something important. I was okay. I was more than okay. I was moving forward and the pain of the past, though still there, no longer defined me. The months after the divorce were a strange mix of freedom and loneliness. At first, I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, caught between anger, sadness, and relief. It was hard to believe that after everything Lauren and I had built together, we were no longer even speaking. She had tried, at first, to stay in contact, but I knew I couldn't keep doing it. Each time she reached out, I felt the weight of the betrayal all over again. I didn't hate her, I just couldn't allow myself to be dragged back into a life I had to walk away from for my own sanity. I threw myself into work, putting in long hours and focusing on my projects, my clients, and the people who had supported me throughout the mess. The business started growing at an impressive pace. I could feel a sense of control returning to my life. It was like I was rebuilding not just my career but also my sense of self. I was reminded of who I was before all of this, before Lauren, before the lies, before the heartbreak. Still, the loneliness crept in at night. It was a strange kind of isolation, one where I had so many people around me during the day, but in the quiet moments, when I would come home to an empty apartment, I felt the sting of what I had lost. It wasn't even about missing Lauren anymore. It was more about the life I had imagined for us, the future we had talked about so many times only to watch it crumble in front of me. One evening, as I sat at my desk reviewing some documents, I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, I was met with the last person I expected to see, Zach. Zach, my son, stood there in front of me. I hadn't seen him in a few weeks. Ever since the divorce, things had been a little strained between us. I knew Lauren had told him her version of things, and it wasn't the version I would have given. She had painted me as the villain, someone who was cold and distant, more focused on work than our family. But I knew Zach was smart. I knew he would eventually see through her story. "Hey, Dad," he said quietly. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, allowing him into the apartment. "Of course. What's up?" He looked uneasy, like he didn't quite know where to start. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I need to ask you something." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "Why didn't you fight for Mom?" The question hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to explain everything that had happened between Lauren and me to my son, especially not now. But I could see the confusion in his eyes. He wasn't angry, he was just lost. I motioned for him to sit down on the couch. "Zach," I said, my voice softening, "it's not that I didn't fight for her. It's that I couldn't fight for someone who had already chosen to walk away from me. She betrayed my trust. She broke our vows. And I couldn't live like that anymore." His face twisted in confusion and he looked away, staring out the window. "But she says you didn't care about her anymore. That you were too busy with work. That you were selfish." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. I had never thought of myself as selfish. But hearing that from Zach, especially after everything that had happened, stung more than I cared to admit. "Zach," I said quietly, leaning forward, "I wasn't perfect. I admit that. I worked a lot, I focused on my career, and maybe I didn't always give her the attention she wanted. But that doesn't justify what she did. You have to understand, there's a difference between being focused on work and being lied to, being betrayed." He nodded slowly, though it was clear he wasn't entirely convinced. "But you didn't even try to fix it. You just left." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I didn't leave because I didn't care, Zach. I left because I couldn't stay in a relationship built on lies. Trust is the foundation of any marriage, and once that's broken, there's nothing left." There was a long silence between us, both of us lost in our thoughts. Finally, Zach turned to look at me. "I get it now, Dad. I don't know how to deal with it. With her. I'm angry with her, but I don't want to be angry at you too." My heart sank. "Zach, I know this is hard. I never wanted you to be caught in the middle. But you need to know I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere. And whatever happened between your mom and me doesn't change the fact that I love you." He stood up, looking a little more at ease than he had before. "I know, Dad. I just need time to figure this all out." I nodded. "Take all the time you need, son. I'm not going anywhere." As he left, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief mixed with sadness. It was hard to explain everything to Zach. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak, it was a lot for anyone to process, let alone a teenager who just wanted things to go back to normal. I knew this wouldn't be the last tough conversation we'd have. There would be more and they would come in time. But for now, I was just glad that he had come to talk. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Zach and I had started rebuilding our relationship slowly but surely. He spent more time at my place, helping me with the business, even giving me ideas for new projects. It felt good to have him around and I could see his confidence starting to return. He was still struggling with his feelings toward his mother, but I could tell he was beginning to understand more about the situation. Lauren, on the other hand, was a different story. She continued to reach out to me, sending texts and emails asking for a chance to talk. At first, I entertained the idea. I wanted closure. I wanted to know why it had happened, why she had chosen him over me. But each time I read her messages, I realized that nothing she said could make up for what she had done. She had chosen Justin. She had made her decision, and no amount of apologies or explanations could change that. I finally made the decision to block her number. I knew it was the right thing to do, but it still felt like a cold, final step. There would be no more attempts at reconciliation, no more wondering if we could fix things. It was over. And so I moved on. Slowly at first, like a man waking from a nightmare. But little by little I found myself again. I started spending more time with friends, reconnecting with the people who had been there for me when I needed them most. I even began dating again tentatively at first, unsure of whether I was ready. But with each passing day, I grew more confident in myself. I realized I wasn't defined by the mistakes Lauren made. I wasn't defined by the way she had broken my heart. One evening, about 6 months after everything had ended, I found myself at a work event, a gala for an environmental organization I had been involved with. The lights were dim, the chatter was soft, and the wine was flowing. As I stood at the bar, chatting with some colleagues, a woman walked in. She was tall, confident, with dark hair and bright, intelligent eyes. She had the kind of presence that demanded attention, but it wasn't in a way that made you feel uncomfortable. It was the kind of confidence I admired. Her name was Sarah, and we started talking almost immediately. As we spoke about the work we were both involved in, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: connection. There was no pressure, no expectations. It felt natural, easy, and before long, we were laughing together, sharing stories about our respective careers. By the end of the night, I knew something had shifted. I wasn't looking for a relationship, not yet. But it was clear to me that there was something worth exploring with Sarah. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of my past holding me back. It had been almost a year since the divorce was finalized. I had come to terms with everything, and though the pain still lingered, I had learned to live with it. My business was thriving. Zach and I had rebuilt our relationship, and I was proud of the progress he'd made. The loneliness that had once threatened to consume me had been replaced with a sense of purpose. I was no longer defined by what I had lost. I had rediscovered myself, and with that, I started to look toward the future, not the past. One day, Zach came to me with an idea that reignited something inside of me. He wanted to launch a new division of the business, a consulting firm focused on environmental sustainability. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself agreeing without hesitation. I knew it was time to take a risk, to invest in something new, something that could become not just another business venture, but a legacy. We worked hard together, securing clients, building a team, and gaining traction in an industry that was growing rapidly. I had never felt so alive, so driven. Our new venture took off faster than I had imagined. Within a year, we secured major contracts, and we were even recognized by industry leaders. Zach and I weren't just father and son anymore. We were business partners. And for the first time since the divorce, I felt like I was truly rebuilding not just my life, but my confidence. I had stepped away from the past, from the betrayal, and instead focused on something tangible, something real. My partnership with Zach had transformed our relationship, and for once, it felt like we were truly working towards something bigger than ourselves. And then there was Sarah. The more I spent time with her, the more I realized she was exactly what I had been looking for without even knowing it. She was grounded, independent, and had a quiet wisdom about her that I admired. She understood the complexities of life and was patient with my past. We started collaborating on more projects together, and before long, we were spending more time outside of work as well. Dinner dates turned into weekend hikes, and eventually, I realized that I wasn't just drawn to her intellect or her passion for the work we did. I was drawn to her as a person, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to consider the possibility of a future with someone new. For years had passed since everything fell apart with Lauren, and I had moved on in ways I never thought possible. My career was thriving, and I had created a life that was mine, one I built from the ground up. Zach and I had turned our business into something remarkable, and I could see the pride in his eyes when he looked at what we had accomplished. I had become the father I always wanted to be for him, and we were closer than ever. One evening, Sarah and I attended a citywide environmental forum. I was invited to speak about the work Zach and I had been doing, and as we stood in the lobby waiting for the event to start, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. Sarah had been by my side for the past few years, supporting me, challenging me, and making me realize that life had more to offer than just the remnants of a broken marriage. At the event, surrounded by colleagues and industry leaders, I looked out across the room at the center we had built, our company logo displayed proudly on the banner. I stood next to Sarah, and beside us, Zach was talking to some clients. The moment hit me like a wave. This was what I had built. Not from bitterness or revenge, but from strength and clarity. I had come out of the darkest time of my life stronger than I ever thought possible. As I looked around the room, a thought struck me: revenge, bitterness, and hate weren't the things that had driven me forward. It was the desire to build something meaningful, something that could outlast the pain. And here I was, with my son and Sarah by my side, watching the fruits of my labor come to life. Later that night, when the event wrapped up, we went out for a drink. Sarah and I sat across from each other, the noise of the crowd around us fading into the background as we shared a quiet moment. I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this point. There had been pain, betrayal, and loss, but I had come through it all. And the person I was now was so far removed from the man I had been back then. As the evening went on, I realized that Lauren's chapter in my life was well and truly closed. I had heard rumors that she and Justin had broken up after a few years. The last I'd heard, she was alone, and I felt a strange indifference. It wasn't out of malice. It was just that, at that moment, I no longer cared about her or the life she had chosen. It was no longer my story to tell. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. The past was just that, the past. It no longer had a hold on me. And as I looked at Sarah across the table, I realized that I had allowed myself to embrace love and partnership again, not out of desperation, but out of the genuine desire to build something good and true. "Here's to new beginnings," Sarah said, raising her glass. I clinked it with mine. "To new beginnings," I echoed. As we left the restaurant, I felt a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying finally lift. Life was no longer defined by what had happened to me, but by what I had made of it. And in that moment, I knew that the best was yet to come.